Do you know what an echo chamber is?
Yeah, it's a chamber that echoes.
Okay, you're not entirely wrong, but what I'm talking about is the one that can dictate a lot of our lives and affect how we...
Wait, it can dictate our lives?
To an extent, and as well as what we believe. It's like really unhealthy.
Okay, you need to tell me more about this because if it's gonna do that, I need to know about it.
Okay, so have you ever noticed how most of what you get fed on social media tends to be things that align with your worldview and your particular perspective of something?
Nope.
Great, this is gonna help you like crazy. So in order for this to help, I kinda need to know what it is. Ah yes, it is an environment in which a person encounters only beliefs or opinions that coincide with their own so that their existing, hey, pay attention, so that their existing views are reinforced and alternative ideas are not considered. Right, so in order for this to help me, I kind of need to know what it is. Dude, I just told you.
Yeah, that came straight from a dictionary and you know it. Draw me a diagram or something.
Okay, fine. So here you have an echo chamber and you exist inside of it. Within this echo chamber are friends who, share your worldview and news outlets or other social medias or input devices that are biased towards your worldview. And that tends to happen automatically from, algorithms feeding you things based on what you put into them. Now, once the idea goes through one of those two avenues, or maybe even both, it gets repeated, and in other words, it gains strength, it gets stronger. Then what happens is those ideas just get circulated and they spin around and go through those avenues and come back to you over and over again. The idea gets repeated continuously and just cycles around and continues to grow stronger and becomes more convincing. And now you have a very effective echo chamber that bounces the idea around and around and around just from different angles and viewpoints, but always lining up with your worldview. Now, if an idea that does not fit your worldview tries to enter, those algorithms will tend to avoid showing that to you because based on what you put into it, they generally know what you agree with and what you don't agree with. This causes the idea to bounce off and fails to be repeated by the group. The exact same thing happens with friends that don't share your worldview because why would they share it with you? And even if your friends do share it with you, it doesn't line up with your worldview and often just gets rejected. Ideas inside the chamber resonate so that the people inside begin to believe it's the predominant worldview, even if they are the ones actually on the fringe, while conflicting ideas never make it into the chamber or are ignored, causing them to die. Okay, now that I kind of know what it is, what are some of the repercussions that it can have? Fantastic question. And the first way that this can dictate your life is the dispersal of information, right? Because when you're living inside of an echo chamber like this, the only things that are coming back to you are things that you agree with or that line up with you. So your ideas aren't getting challenged. And every idea that comes in is just a recycled version of what you already believe. And when this happens, it's really, really hard to get alternative or, diverse viewpoints on things, which make it even harder to understand. You'll find this happening naturally in productivity, communities, because there's only so much you can learn about productivity and there's only so many hacks, and it ends up becoming this big giant recycling bin of people's different interpretations of the exact same things. And most of the time it's very similar stuff, if not the exact same thing. It's just getting repeated around and around and around. There's not actually new information that no one's ever heard of getting thrown into the group, and that can be a serious problem. Algorithms are really good at this, and obviously if they think that you don't associate with a certain political party, for example, they will not show you stuff that are gonna line up with that. They're gonna avoid doing that because they know what your preferences are. And if they think that you're not going to agree with it or respond to it or like or share or whatever, they're not gonna show it to you, which is a little bit freaky because now you have algorithms that are determining what they think you're gonna like and determining what they want to show you and kind of cherry picking the stuff that they want you to see and what they want you to learn from. It's a little freaky, honestly. The second thing that can happen is polarization. And this happens because, when our ideas are affirmed and our beliefs are affirmed without being challenged or, stretched and having to be defended, you can end up just believing that, this is the only way, and everybody that doesn't agree with it is clearly wrong. And this creates a very strong polarization and a divide between the two people and a lack of the ability to empathize with the other side of the group. Without that ability to empathize with that person and at least understand where they're coming from, it makes it really hard to problem solve. And so like if this happens in a business, for example, with, you know, a particular project or something, and people are getting polarized over it, it's very hard to come together and problem solve. And what you'll see happen is people will get really dogmatic or overly enthusiastic, and they'll just trample over people because it's so polarized that they believe they and their group are the only ones that are correct. And if you don't agree with that, then you're outside of that group, and therefore you are wrong. And if you challenge it, you're a terrible person. It can be extremely exhausting to have conversations with these types of people because they can just have this it's like such a polarized view of what they believe and why, that like anything outside of that threatens it, and they freak out and just like no, this is right, and they will do everything they can to prevent that from being, you know, jostled. And that lack of empathy there to say, you know, I disagree with you, but help me understand. And when they lack that, it is really hard to have a solid relationship with that person. Like, because anytime that topic or whatever it is comes up, it's just this clashing of of these two people that are both so polarized that they can't see the other person from their angle. Are there any benefits to an echo chamber? None. Wait, what? There's like nothing positive about it? People will define it different ways so that, you know, they can try to pull benefits out of it. But if you're living inside of an echo chamber like I described, it's only harmful. It doesn't do you any good. In fact, it takes you backwards. Okay, please explain, because honestly, I'm a little surprised by that. The reason it's so harmful is because the only thing coming back to you are things that line up with your worldview. And that's really, really dangerous because it doesn't require you to move forward and grow and learn. You can just sit in your comfortable spot because it all agrees. Like, there's no conflict and there's no need for resolution and to work through stuff. Whenever there's conflict, that means that you're working through what you believe and why, and that strengthens it. It makes it stronger. It's kind of like having a house full of mirrors. Like, if you ever go through, like, try to walk through a maze of mirrors, it's incredibly frustrating. Like, you can't move forward. It's not efficient, and everything that comes back to you is just a reflection of yourself, and that doesn't require you to grow, and you can't move forward in that. And yeah, you have to learn how to smash down those mirrors and break out of that, because nothing else is going to come inside of that. It's just you and your little world right there, and everything is coming back to you that you already agree with, and nothing else can get inside. And that's really dangerous. So yeah, you have to learn how to smash down those mirrors and get outside of that, because that's where actually growth happens. And that's the difference between a cult and a community, because a cult will push everything out and abandon all other ideas until they can't hear anything else. And their idea is the only thing that they hear. And a community will allow you to step outside of that and learn and grow and be stretched. And it's incredibly sad because you have this group that kicks out everything until they can only hear their own perspectives, and it turns into this stagnation that's not changing and growing, and usually it ends up just spiraling until it implodes on itself. And there's no growth there, and when you're not growing, you're not moving forward, you're not progressing. Okay, thanks for the confidence boost, man. Any grand ideas on how not to be like that? Yes, and the first thing that you can do is learn to realize when you're inside of one. And we all gravitate towards them because they're comfortable at first. And like, algorithms will try to push you into them because that's where they get the most interaction. So I'm guessing you can somewhat tell that based on whether or not you're able to empathize with someone else's perspective or opinion, right? Yeah, that's a really, really good start. And it takes a really strong person to weigh someone else's perspective that they don't agree with without feeling threatened by it, because we'll feel in danger and we'll react to things that we think threaten our identity. And so if you find that you're getting really dogmatic about something, or you feel threatened and you're trying to push back, probably means that whatever you're talking about is rooted or is taking too much of your identity. Your identity is placed incorrectly on that, because that's not a solid enough foundation. Awesome. So I get really dogmatic about whether or not it's okay to eat donuts. So what should I do with that? Okay, first you should probably get a gym membership. But when you identify what that something is, a really good exercise is to try to understand it from someone else's perspective, or the opposing perspective. And if you're a mature individual, you'll be able to do that without completely abandoning all of your own opinions and beliefs. If not, then it'll just take a little bit more time and a little bit more practice. And a really good exercise is when you figure out something you believe, or a preference, or whatever it is, eating donuts, then, like, argue for the other person, argue against yourself from the other person's perspective, because that's how you know that you actually understand, like, both sides of things. You may not agree with that perspective, but it's possible that millions of other people do, so it's really important that you understand it at least. Ultimately, the goal here is to become a well-rounded person that can learn and grow from perspectives that he doesn't even necessarily agree with. Does that kind of make sense? I think so. You're saying that in order to be a well-rounded donut eater, I should at least try to understand the viewpoint of those that don't think it's a great idea to eat donuts. Is that right? You got it. I feel like that's gonna stretch you quite a bit. Yeah, probably will. Oh, are you gonna tell them about the last video we made? Oh yeah, they should definitely check that out. I'll put it on the end screen so they can just click on it. Nice. Well, I'm gonna get some donuts.